Well, there's really not much left to say, is there? Except...
By the power of Grayskull!
Here it is, friends, Castle Grayskull. Silhouetted against the dark sky on the planet Eternia stands Castle Grayskull, fortress of power and mystery. The huge stone structure looms large and frightening on a bleak hillside. A colossal skull glares down. Its black eyes stare silently out on the lonely terrain. Its lower jaw, ringed by sharp stone teeth, swings down to open as a drawbridge entrance into the frightening castle. Only the brave, or the foolhardy, enter willingly into Castle Grayskull. Castle Grayskull, like many things from the Masters of the Universe line, has had numerous origins. I focus on the original mini-comic origin for all the characters in the Wind Raider, so it should come as no surprise that I am going to do the same for Castle Grayskull itself. The origin of this mysterious castle is that it was not always such. Castle Grayskull was once a palace of beauty that was known as the Hall of Wisdom, the center of Eternian culture and the storehouse for all knowledge in the universe. The hall was the meeting place for the Council of Elders, a council that, truthfully, we don't know much about in the original origins of the franchise. One day, the council was visited by the image of a woman dressed in snake armor who foretold of the coming danger in the future and also foretold of the coming of He-Man. It was not stated whether the snake-wearing woman was the sorceress, this one, not that one, or if it was Teela from the future. I like to believe this was actually Teela, even from a time long ahead of the mini-comic age, a time when either the sorceress/goddess and Teela merged into a single being again, or a time when Teela has reached her full potential as a clone of the goddess and has possibly taken up that mantle. Upon hearing this warning from the armored woman, the elders decided to concentrate all of their power, knowledge, and wisdom into a magical orb. Then they transformed the Hall of Wisdom itself into the terrifying visage of Castle Grayskull. It was decided to transform the hall into Castle Grayskull to frighten intruders away and protect the orb. We don't know precisely when all of this happened in Eternia's past. In fact, this origin is not widely known by the denizens of Eternia. In the first mini-comic, He-Man and the Power Sword, it is stated that Castle Grayskull is so ancient no one knew its origin. What we can guess from that narrative of the comics is that this all happened eons before we catch up with He-Man and company, happening even before the Great Wars. We know this because Castle Grayskull already existed by the time Skeletor was pulled through the doorway between dimensions during the Great Wars. In this incarnation of Castle Grayskull, it was an empty and haunted husk of a castle. The sorceress, later known as the goddess, did not live within the walls of the castle. He-Man did not just open the drawbridge whenever he felt, and even the heroes did not wander freely within the halls of the castle. Instead, Castle Grayskull was empty and mysterious and terrifying to the people of Eternia. There was only one inhabitant of the castle, and it was an entity that was known only as the spirit of Castle Grayskull. This disembodied entity would manifest itself as a skull-like apparition that would speak only when it chose to, and more often than not, it would only speak to the heroes of the land and haunt the villains that would breach the walls of the castle. We are never really told the origin of the spirit of Castle Grayskull, who or what it was, or why it was anchored to the castle. We are never told what happened to the Council of Elders after the transformation of the castle and the creation of the orb, but at least one YouTube host named Mac thinks it is entirely possible that the spirit of Castle Grayskull is a combination of the consciousness of Elders. But that is just complete speculation. The exterior of the Mega Construx Castle Grayskull is exactly what it needs to be. When you look at the front of the castle, the visage of it is everything that it needs to be and should be. Despite what may be expected, this build of Castle Grayskull is not based off of the 1982 vintage Mattel Castle Grayskull, but rather the 2013 re-release of Castle Grayskull for the Masters of the Universe Classics line. As much as it pains me to say this, that was the right choice. As much as I love the vintage castle, I even still have my original from '82, it was the first playset I ever owned as a kid. The 2013 release was a much better representation of what Castle Grayskull should have been. The Mega Construx Castle Grayskull has the same iconic appearance in front that both the vintage and 2013 models gave us. Sunken eyes and nose with black backing gives it a fantastic skull look that was necessary for this build to work. If Mega Construx would not have been able to present the skull motif in brick-built form, then this set would not have worked at all. And truthfully, when I first saw this set for pre-order, I wasn't sure how well it was going to look. But trust me when I say it looks much better in person than it does in the photos, or possibly even on this video. The majority of Castle Grayskull is made up of 1x1 studs and 1x2 bricks that make up the towers. It was a bit tedious to put together at times, but it works so well and genuinely makes the castle look like it was made of brick and stone. Also, once you were done putting the towers together, you did really feel like you built something. Of course, the castle has its 2 towers, and at the top of its shorter one, the one on the left, we have the laser cannon, something that has been present since the very beginning. However, unlike the others that were just a laser cannon mounted on a stand, this version of Castle Grayskull actually gives us a full turret. Not only does it pivot up and down, but it rotates a full 360 degrees. I like this a lot, and I feel like it should have always been like this. On the taller of the 2 towers, the right tower, we have the flag of Castle Grayskull. Like other incarnations of the castle, the flag is dual-sided, so you can display if the forces of good or the forces of evil are in control of the castle. The drawbridge is one of my favorite features of the exterior of the castle. The brown plate pieces perfectly represent wooden planks that make up the bridge, and a gray shield and metallic silver crossed swords for decorations. Further, the drawbridge has accents along the bottom to represent hinge points and a locking bar across the front. And what would the drawbridge be if it couldn't be opened by the power sword? One of the play features of the vintage Castle Grayskull, as well as one of the points of lore of the castle, is that the drawbridge could only be opened by the power sword. In the vintage castle, the sword was inserted into a keyhole in the drawbridge itself. With this piece, the power sword can be inserted into a slot beside the drawbridge, not unlike how we saw Skeletor gain access into the castle in the Alcala mini-comics. Once the sword is inserted, this activates a mechanism that you build that opens the drawbridge. At the top of the crown of the castle, we have a pawn. The addition was missing from the vintage piece, but was shown in almost all mini-comics artwork, as well as the 2013 re-release. Another feature that was presented in the mini-comics and even the vintage box art, but missing from the vintage model itself, is a ledge that wraps around the left tower. To get to the outer ledge is a secret door built into the side of the tower that leads into the throne room, and we'll take a closer look at that once we're inside the castle. Like the vintage and 2013 release of Castle Grayskull, the Mega Construx model of the castle has only 2 exterior walls. The front, which we just took a look at, and the right side wall. Much of the look of the right side is an incredible representation of the vintage and the 2013 models. I love the brown tile pieces they used to create the thatched roof look over the windows, as well as the rounded cap of the rear tower. Look at this design right here. This is what I love about brick-built sets like Mega Construx. While someone else designed this entire set, putting it together yourself and having something that looks as detailed as this in the end is so satisfying. While there's not much as far as play or action features on this side of the castle, I do have to admit that I love the attention to detail they put into this side. The window frames, the before-mentioned rooftops, and especially the spire on the center window here. One of the features of this side of the castle does have a throwback to the 2013 issue of the castle. On the vintage model, below the overhang here, there was a plain wall that always looked suspiciously like it should have had a doorway. The 2013 reissue actually did turn this into a doorway that could be opened by a key that came with Scare Glow. Mega Construx has given this version of Castle Grayskull a secret door, a breakaway wall that can be moved aside for a secret entrance into Castle Grayskull, and this is just a hint at the mysteries that await us inside the castle itself. And that brings us to the interior of Castle Grayskull, and there is a lot going on inside the castle, so let's get started. The first things we are going to look at are the add-on builds that come with the set, the weapons racks, the training dummy, and the ladder. First, we're going to look at the weapons racks, and yes, there are 2 of them. The first weapon rack is a marvelous brick-built replica of the original weapon rack that came with the vintage castle, complete with a full complement of weapons. If you look at this next to a picture of the vintage rack, it is amazing how much these two pieces look alike. The second weapon rack is also from the vintage toy, but it was just a cardboard cutout that was used as decoration. While this one isn't a perfect match to that piece, they did do a really good job of giving us a 3D representation. Between these two weapons racks, we get a great addition of weapons for the line. Extra weapons were always being given out with figures, playsets, and expansions, so I greatly appreciate the weaponry they give us with the castle. We also have the practicing dummy, and once again, this is a very good representation of the vintage toy accessory. The original concept with the 5-inch figures was that their power punch would hit one side of the top spinner and it would spin, and the character would then have to dodge the spinner's strike. The Mega Construx minifigures don't have the power punch action, but the function is still fun. And finally, we have the ladder, a small build that was included because the vintage Castle Grayskull came with one. The ladder is loose and can be positioned anywhere you want to put it inside the castle. There's not much on the first floor of Castle Grayskull, with the right side of the castle being almost empty and only having the secret passage in the wall that leads outside. At the front of the castle, we have something that was not included with the vintage toy, an actual dungeon cell. In the vintage toy, the dungeon was just a sticker on the floor of the castle that suggested there was a dungeon there. Here we have a cell that is obviously inspired by the 2013 reissue of Castle Grayskull, but instead of a small door that you have to squeeze the action figures into, the entire wall of the Mega Construx cell pivots and opens, giving you ample access for figure posing. There are great pieces lining the floor of the cell and a chain hanging from the ceiling. There are also a pair of pink arms that are supposed to be a callback to the vintage sticker, like they were reaching up from under the floor grates. But I don't think this works as well as the designers thought it would. I do, however, appreciate the addition of them, and I especially like the amount of room we have inside the cell for figure placement. On the second floor, we have some of the most interesting features of the castle. First, on the right side, well, the left side now that we're inside, we have the supercomputer. In the original vintage toy, this computer and computer screen was another cardboard cutout piece, and in the 2013 reissue, it was a plastic piece that was attached to the wall. Here, with Mega Construx, the computer is brick-built and is attached to a pivot point on the left side of the computer. The computer can swing away and give you access to a secret area behind the computer where figures can get to the windows, or you can hide items and figures back here. Above the computer, we have a computer monitor, and this was something that I always loved about Castle Grayskull. The computer monitor displays an orbital image of the planet Eternia itself. This suggested very heavily that Castle Grayskull's secrets were not just arcane, but technological as well. Remember, in the original stories of the Masters of the Universe, everything we were reading and learning about took place centuries after something called the Great Wars, and the sorceress, this one, not that one, bestowed upon He-Man artifacts from a bygone era. Artifacts that were technological in nature and designed by Eternian scientists. The implication of this computer monitor and the image of Eternia from space is that there is a satellite network around the planet and it's still functioning. More than that, Castle Grayskull has access to that satellite network, and it may be the only location on Eternia that has access to it. A stronghold like Castle Grayskull being the only location on all of Eternia that has access to a global orbital satellite network would give the ruler of the castle great power indeed. Along the front of the castle, we first come to this piece displaying a spacesuit of some type, possibly an artifact that is an ancient Eternian astronaut suit. With the vintage toy, this was another cardboard cutout piece that was positioned in the corner of the room. With the 2013 reissue, it was a plastic blow shell that could be positioned in the castle, held in place by foot pegs. I was really hoping that with this set, Mega Construx would have had a 3D representation of this suit and not just this transparent piece with some artwork on it. A minifigure or even just a solid, non-posable piece would have been preferable to this, especially since the diagnostic equipment that the suit is hooked up to is brick-built as well. Now, having said that, I do have to admit that the design on this is beautiful, and I appreciate that this piece is printed and that wasn't a sticker that had to be put on. All of the artwork you see here in Castle Grayskull, by the way, are printed pieces. There were no stickers to this set. And speaking of printed pieces, in front of the spacesuit equipment, we have a printed piece with the famous eye rug. Anyone who had the vintage Castle Grayskull knows what this means. This is the rug that covers the trap door that leads down to the dungeon. Put a figure on the printed piece, slide the throne, and the floor drops out from under the unsuspecting victim and drops them down into the dungeon on the first floor. The vintage Castle Grayskull dropped the figure down onto the sticker I mentioned before, implying that the victim was dropped into the dungeon. The 2013 reissue of Castle Grayskull confusingly misses the dungeon and instead drops the figure in front of the drawbridge. That makes this Mega Construx model, to the best of my knowledge, the first version of Castle Grayskull that drops a victim from the second floor directly into the dungeon below. Next up, we have the throne room, the section of the second floor that dominates the central portion of the front wall. The throne room is very well designed and constructed. It doesn't resemble the vintage model at all. However, this throne room is inspired entirely by the 2013 reissue of the playset. The throne and the banners behind it are replicas of the reissue toy, and they are a fantastic reproduction. The throne sits a little high, and whoever is sitting in the throne can't touch the floor with their feet. This gives the figure a kind of booster seat appearance, but I can get past this minor issue, because if the feet touch the floor, the action feature of sliding the throne to release the trapdoor would not be as smooth. Another feature of the throne room is this mounting plate that displays twin swords. The set gives you two silver metallic swords for display purposes, but you can remove those swords and replace them with the twin halves of the power sword. This is another reason I wish this set came with an Alcala-style evil half of the power sword, so we could mount both of them on the wall in the throne room. I'm also hoping that at some point the Mega Construx Masters of the Universe line extends out to She-Ra, so I can mount the Sword of Power and the Sword of Protection here as it should be. And yes, I know She-Ra was a product of the Filmation series I seem to revile so much, but we'll get to that if She-Ra is ever released. And now, just past the throne room to the right, we have an empty room in the short tower. I really feel like something needs to be in this room, and who knows, maybe at some point I'll find something to display here. However, the importance of this chamber is the secret door that leads to the ledge that wraps around the short tower. This actually makes sense to me, making it some kind of last-ditch escape route for the ruler of Castle Grayskull should the castle be sacked. How they get down from the ledge, I'm not sure, but hey, maybe that's what the ladder is for. Unlike the vintage toy, but reminiscent of the 2013 reissue, the Mega Construx Castle Grayskull has a third level. On the left wall of the castle, there's not much to speak of. It's just a flat surface that's only real feature is access to the elevator. Along the front wall, to the left and right, we have access to the left and right towers, and we can get a better look at the laser turret on the short tower. In the center of the third level is a door that opens to a small chamber that houses a blue translucent orb, the orb that was created by the Council of Elders that houses all of the knowledge of Eternia. Before we wrap up our look at the Mega Construx Castle Grayskull, there's a few more things to take a look at. First, we talked about the elevator a lot when discussing the left wall of the castle, so here it is. A yellow build that works great. It uses two springs built into the elevator platform that push back on the vertical track. These springs apply enough pressure that the elevator can be easily slid, but keeps its position no matter where the elevator stops. My only concern with this is that over time, the springs will lose tension and the elevator won't be able to hold its position anymore. At the top of the elevator are two golden skulls that are mounted on posts that are the same size as the neck pegs of the minifigures. This means that the skulls can be used in place of minifigures' normal heads. And you can place a minifigure's head at the top of the elevator. And it can be pretty horrifying. Also, like the vintage toy of Castle Grayskull, this entire build is modeled around a clamshell design, meaning that the castle does in fact close up for storage. It's hinged at the corner of the castle, and there is a latching clip piece here at the bottom. On the side wall of the castle, we have built part of the wall to resemble the built-in handle that was present in the vintage toy and the 2013 reissue. However, I wouldn't recommend trying to carry it by this. It's just Mega Construx bricks, and it's not strong enough to support the weight of the castle itself. It will pull off. If you're going to carry the castle, after closing it up, just pick it up from the base and carry it that way. With only a few minor nitpicks, Castle Grayskull is integral to your Masters of the Universe Mega Construx line. The centerpiece of not only your collection, but of the lore of the line itself, Castle Grayskull is irreplaceable. The price-to-part ratio is really good for this set, although you do have to take into consideration that a large number of the pieces are 1x1 studs and 1x2 bricks. But then there are the minifigures to consider, which we've taken a look at in previous videos. If you're an avid collector of the Mega Construx Masters of the Universe line, or Masters of the Universe in general, or you just like really cool brick-built castles, then Mega Construx Castle Grayskull is a must-have for you. Thank you everyone for being so patient and waiting for this video review of Castle Grayskull. I know it took a while, and I do apologize for that. If you have this set, let me know what you think in the comments down below. How do you think this compares to the vintage toy or the 2013 reissue? Yes, there is a 2003 playset, but we don't talk about that one. We have more Masters of the Universe sets coming from Mega Construx, and I can't wait to get my hands on them. I can't find Stratos or Scareglow at a reasonable price anywhere, so if any of you have leads, feel free to let me know in the comments below. Also, I would love to give a huge shout out to Pixel Dan. I know I'm a small channel and he may not know who I am, but he just had some major news about his involvement in the new Masters of the Universe line going forward. I don't want to spoil it, I'll let him tell you in his own words, so I'll leave a link to his announcement video in the description below. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at BrickIntyre, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Ring the bell so you'll always know when I post new videos. Play well, everyone, and as always, thank you for watching.